Hi, Craig. I'm back. And we're going to take a look at lesson 14, the self-test, what you call it? Self-check. So the self-check, and this is going to double as your test review. So you aren't going to get another test review. We're going to do this all together. So we're going to go to the review for the test, work our way down line by line, and look at the part in the self-check where you're doing it. Everything is in the self-check. It's going to be on your test. In fact, there's one part that's not on your test, the participial part, which will, just as Christian Light does, it'll end up being on your next quiz and next test. Okay, so let's start here. Review for test. We're on page 51. Are you all there? Okay, everyone's on board, and the first question is how to use commas in a sentence. Go back to your self-check to numbers 13 through 15. Place commas where they are needed. So there are a couple things you learned about commas here. Okay, first of all, you have these compound sentences that have a sentence and they're being put together with a semicolon, and they're joined with these conjunctive adverbs, such as however and therefore and so on. You always need a comma after those conjunctive adverbs. So, if contrails evaporate quickly, the atmosphere is dry and fair weather will continue, semicolon, a conjunctive adverb. Always needs a comma following a conjunctive adverb, or those joining words, I think is kind of what they were called in the study. Okay, secondly, what you learned would be introductory. Whoa, I've got a funny chip on my chalk here. I'm having to get used to, again, having chalk all over your hands. It gets on your pants and all that, but I still like it. So, I got to deal with it. I'm about out of chalk, too, and I should throw this away. Introductory adverb phrases. Is it clauses too? Not sure. But anyway, like on number 14, with the use of Doppler radar, comma. Okay, meteorologists can better predict tornadoes. How? With the use of Doppler radar. So when you have an adverb phrase that begins the sentence, it needs to be separated with a comma, those introductory phrases. All right, so you know that. Back to the review for the test. How to write sentences with vivid verbs. I'm telling you what, you impressed me. You caught on to that one. So remember when we wrote that about our own experience, some of you, in fact several of you, struggled with using descriptive adjectives and adverbs but instead of verbs. But you really caught that. So on the quiz, I think practically all of you got a hold of that. So instead of saying walked, you say trudged. Or if you want to go really fast, you say sped or zoomed. And various other words that can work. And you have a part like that, I believe, on number 5. Yeah. They ran rapidly, sprinted maybe. So, why did I give you an answer? Anyway. Okay, the third one here, how to identify and diagram infinitive phrases used as adverbs. Ouch! I'm telling you, this one is still one I would say you all kind of struggle with. So let's just go over to number 11. Where is it? Okay, so first of all, let's go to number 11 on page 45. Page 45 on how to diagram infinitive phrases used in adverbs. I don't think that's hard. And by the way, you really didn't struggle. If you know they're adverbs, that wasn't so bad. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. The hard part that most of you had was to determine, is an infinitive an adjective, an adverb, or a noun? Probably on quiz 1, more of you struggled with that than about any other part. So if you want to do some focusing, study lesson 1 in the book and try your best to get your mind wrapped around what the difference is. And so maybe we'll just talk about that briefly to help you again. So, and you're going to have 3 of them here on your self-check, and so you're supposed to pick noun, adjective, or adverb, and there is 1 of each. So that makes it a lot easier. You know there's 1 of each. But think about them carefully. So, you know, many of them are nouns. But because you're doing adverbs and adjectives, there are proportionally, they're kind of spread out because they're wanting you to learn it. But often an infinitive is going to be a noun. So always check, does the sentence has a subject? If it needs a subject, could the infinitive be the subject? And if it is, then it's used as a noun. Another one that can be pretty obvious is if you have an action verb, then be on the lookout for a direct object. And pretty often you can have an infinitive used as a direct object. So it's receiving the action of the verb. Now, when they're used as adjectives, practically always, they're going to immediately follow the word, the noun that they describe. So you'll have a noun, and then immediately following, there'll be the infinitive. Okay, so and it's going to answer the question, you know, which. So, you know, whose or which, and that kind of thing, just like adjectives would. Probably here's where a lot of you struggle, because sometimes it's saying why about the verb back here, or it may be saying why about an adverb of extent. So I'll just give you a clue. If you find an infinitive and it's coming after some other words, and there was the word to back in the sentence, so you may have to, and then you may have a noun, and then you may have this infinitive. Remember, that's almost always going to be an adverb, and it's going to go back to that adverb of extent, too. So it's going to be an adverb modifying another adverb. And that can happen. Okay? So be on the lookout for that. Yeah, so watch out for that. Study those very carefully on your self-check. Let me just point out where those are on the self-check. I will get back to that diagram we started talking about. So yeah, 10, 11, and 12 on your self-check. There's 1 of each. Study them very carefully. Remember, if it's an adjective, it's going to come right after the noun and answer which or whose, so something along that line, and or what kind of. And then if it's an adverb, it's going to say why or what. And okay, so here's one that I know a lot of you struggled with on the diagrams on quiz 1. So probably I corrected it for you, but back on I think the back page, a lot of you put an infinitive under the verb and calling it an adverb phrase modifying the verb when it was actually a direct object. So be on the lookout for that. If you have an action verb, you want to ask yourself, is that action being passed? Is this being done to something? And then you may very well have a direct object. So pull out your quiz 1, look on the back page. Some of you got it right, but I would say most of you missed that one. And you'll quickly see, I think it's the second to last one on quiz 1. Now, where were we? Yeah, so why don't you go back to page 45, number 11, and look at that diagram. Now, you already did this one, but there's an example of diagramming an infinitive. So, you should have diagrammed that number 11 this way. So you had Sarah. And she called. And what was it? Here, what was called? It was grandmother. Who received the action. So Sarah called grandmother. And why? So it's an adverb infinitive modifying the verb to wish. And remember, because it maintains its verbishness, to wish, you have a direct object, birthday. Birthday. A. Happy. And then here you had an indirect object, her, to her. So, how do you diagram infinitives? Just like you would a prepositional phrase, to wish, but you would never have a direct object behind a prepositional phrase. So it's very different because this word is a verb and not a noun. So that's what makes it infinitive. Okay, so let's study those carefully, and yes, that will be on your test. All right, let's go back to page 51 and look at the review again. Okay, we did the difference between infinitive phrases used as nouns, adjectives, and adverbs. We covered that. That's again on lesson 1. So go all the way back there and review that really well. How to correct sentences that contain redundancies. So I think you have that one figured out. They're on numbers 33 to 35 on your self-check. So again, there's just one place you need to fix in each sentence. Some of you cross out one word, some couple or 3 words. So, but I think you have that figured out. All right, identifying simple, compound, complex sentences. That's 36 to 39 on your self-check. So you're supposed to mark the subjects and verbs. And if you have 2 subjects and 2 verbs, and they could be pulled apart and made complete sentences, then it's compound, which happens to be the case on the first one. There, I just gave you another answer. Anyway, so simple is if you only have 1 subject and 1 verb. Of course, it can be compound subjects and compound verbs, but just 1 set there. And then complex is when you have at least 1 independent clause and 1 or more dependent clauses. So you're going to have at least 2 sets of subject and verbs, but the 1 set, if you pulled it out, wouldn't be a complete sentence. So then it's going to be complex. But there, on that part where you need to underline subject and underline verb twice, on the 1 sentence that is complex, make sure you get the subject and verb in the dependent clause. That is a subject and verb pattern. But remember, the difference is, if you pulled it out, it wouldn't make any sense by itself. And so you have an independent clause, a sentence that does make sense by itself, and then a subject-verb clause in the sentence that if you pulled out, it wouldn't make. So you have an independent and dependent complex sentence. Study those carefully. Call me if you have questions about that. All right, what do we have next over on page 51? Capitalization. What kind of words to capitalize? Do you know how to capitalize father, aunt, senator, or president? So you have capitalization that is on, which number was that? Oh yeah, number 16 through 21. So study all those carefully, and remember we covered that pretty well, I think, about aunt and uncle, father, mother, senator, governor, and so on. If it's a part of the person's name, Uncle Dale, capitalize it. If it's a part of their title, President Trump, capitalize it. But then if you're just talking about a doctor, you don't, I went to see the doctor, you don't capitalize it. If it's Dr. Jones, then yes, you do capitalize it. Or if you use the word in place of his name, how are you doing today, doctor? Then you would capitalize it. Mother, father, aunt, uncle, the rule is simply, of course it is if you use an uncle and aunt with the person's name, but how about mother and father? If you can replace it with their name and it makes sense, then it should be capitalized. So don't capitalize if you're saying my aunt's dog was run over on the road. When it's preceded by a possessive pronoun that's being used as an adjective, usually you don't. So my aunt, if your aunt's name is Sarah, you would not say my Sarah's dog. That wouldn't make sense. So in that case, you would not capitalize aunt. All right. So what about gerunds and gerund phrases? Let's look at numbers 22 to 24 in your self-check. Underline the gerund phrases, circle the gerunds. So remember, gerunds are going to be those ing words, verb plus ing, but always used as nouns. You're getting it. Gerunds are nice because they end in ing, so you can find them, always used as nouns. Now, before you get thinking it's too easy, remember participles can also end in ing, but they're going to be always used as adjectives. So when you're going to call it a gerund, make sure in your mind you ask yourself, so I think it's a noun, what job is it doing in a sentence? It has to do one of the noun jobs. Subject, direct object, predicate nominative, object of preposition, or in a positive. It has to be one of those. So look at number 22. All visitors are to remain quiet during the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Okay, visitors are to remain quiet. There's an infinitive, by the way. When? During, okay, it's the phrase that you're going to want to underline is changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. That whole thing is a gerund phrase. And of course, changing is the one you're going to want to circle, and it's an object of preposition. During is the preposition, the changing. So it's during. You would diagram it as put during right here, and then you would have this little deal, and like this, and you would put change in, and so of the guard, all that stuff underneath. Okay. Could you see that? Yeah, so during, changing would be how you would diagram it. Again, too much stuff up here. Okay, so those are gerunds. Now let's go to the next thing, how to identify action, being, linking, and helping verbs. So we had a lesson on that. I didn't write down what those are, but I think you can review that yourself. And I believe they will be on numbers 27 to 31. So let's just maybe back up there to 27. Yeah, so identify each word as action, being, or linking. So it is a being verb, if it is am, is, are, was, were, be, been, being, and it doesn't have a complement following it. So no predicate adjective, no predicate nominative. If it has a predicate adjective or nominative, it's going to be a linking verb. And remember the linking verbs, there's a whole list. There are, of course, the verbs of being, then there are the sometimes linking and the always linking. And remember the sometimes linking, they are action verbs, have, has, and do, does, and did. Taste, feel, smell, sound, look, appear. And yeah, those words that are sometimes they're action, sometimes they're linking. They can be used as action verbs. So be on the lookout. They're only linking verbs if you have a predicate adjective and a predicate nominative with them. And they're action verbs if they don't. Okay, so study that carefully, not new things at all to you. Okay, so correctly punctuating sentences that contain single and double quotation marks. We went over that pretty thoroughly. Just do the exercise, then check yourself, and make sure you watch very carefully on which side you're putting the quotation with question marks and exclamation points, because that's really critical. You can get it wrong if you do that incorrectly. All right, now let's go to number 43 on your diagrams on page 50, and we'll just sort of do that one take a look at that one, and then we're going to conclude this. Okay, 43 was an interesting one. The deep mountain stream was too cold for swimming. Now, you see, of course, that you have stream was cold. Okay, and so you have the word to, and to is an adverb of extent. So it's cold, but to what extent? So you have to. Now, often adverbs of extent can have modifiers. And so for swimming is a modifier, and it's a prepositional phrase. But the object of the preposition is swimming. What is swimming? Yes, it is a gerund. So you need to do it this way. Of course, you have the, deep, and mountain over here. So gerunds always used as nouns, in this case as an object of preposition. All right, so once again, this is doubling as an overview of your self-check and as a review for your test. So you, after you get this done, you can review this again, spend a lot of time over your self-check, do it, score it, correct it, and then when you're all done and you feel comfortable that you're ready, probably best to wait till next Tuesday and keep it right on the day. But I'm not going to say you can't do it on Monday if you're all ready for it. So, but let's try to keep things as much together as possible. But for sure by Tuesday, do your test and make sure it gets handed in the next weekend following. So I'm going to try to have your new books out, and you should be able to pick those up this weekend. Now, it depends if you're listening to this before Monday. If I'm making this on Tuesday for the next Tuesday, so we're a little ways out here. But anyway, this weekend I'm going to have your new books on the table. You're going to pick up your quiz 1s that I have scored, and you're going to hand in your quiz 2s that you did today. And then this next Tuesday, you're going to do the test. And by the way, when you get your new books, make sure you tear out your quizzes and tests, give those to your parents, and make sure they're put in a safe place. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to call. And thank you. God bless you. I hope your day goes well.